First proper review this week, Car Seat Headrest Twin Fantasy. Just to remind you, when Pitchfork reviews things, they review them on a 0 to 10 scale, somewhere around 8.2 or 8.3. They give it a B&M if it's a new release, or B&R if it's a reissue of an old album, anthology, greatest hits, something like that. So Darren, take it away.
Right, Car Seat Headrests with Twin Fantasy, which was released by Matador, and on Friday got an 8.6 B&M in a review by Mark Richardson. Before 2016's Teens of Denial made Car Seat Headrest an indie household name, singer-songwriter Will Toledo earned an obsessive cult following with 9 self-recorded Bandcamp LPs and 1 compilation of re-recorded highlights after signing to Matador. More than any other of these independent releases, 2011's Twin Fantasy established Toledo as one of the most exciting voices in underground music and was quickly declared a masterpiece on forums like 4chan's Mew and Reddit. Recorded with a laptop microphone when he was just 19, Twin Fantasy is an absurdly ambitious concept album detailing the narrator's infatuation with another young man based at least in part on Toledo's first love. Toledo never considered the album finished and felt that the lo-fi limitations prevented him from achieving his original vision. So with access to a proper recording studio and a full band, he has re-recorded the entire album and added almost 12 minutes of additional material. Pitchfork praises the new recording for more successfully showcasing Toledo's wit, cynicism, and an eye for detail that captures teenage desire and heartache, and fans seem to agree. The new Twin Fantasy, subtitled Face to Face to avoid confusion with the original, which is now subtitled Mirror to Mirror, is currently the highest rated album of the year on RateYourMusic.com. What is your previous opinion on Car Seat Headrest, and have you checked out the original Twin Fantasy?
I had only heard the record we reviewed, Teens of Denial, and I remember not liking that. I don't remember what I gave it, but I'm sure it was very mean. I had never listened to the original of Twin Fantasy, but I did in checking out the new one for the podcast. I'll save my opinions.
Well, that we reviewed that Teens of Denial. I definitely liked it. I think I quite enthusiastically liked it. I can't remember if it ended up on my end of the year list, but it's kind of thing that I think I've sort of warmed to. It's something that I've actually listened to since it came out. On several occasions, thrown it on, and I think I like it more even than I did at first. I think it's a really exciting record. I was really excited about this one, although I guess we'll discuss how we feel about this whole re-recording business. But this week I checked out for the first time this original Twin Fantasy. I know that I've seen the album art posted on Mew, over and over again over the years. But we'll talk about it. But it is more lo-fi than I think I can get into, honestly. But what about you, Darren?
Yep. So I absolutely adore Car Seat Headrests. I was obsessed for a short little while when that record came out, and pretty much the entire year spent listening to that. It didn't make my number 1, but it was definitely very close. May have been number 2 or 3. But after all of that, I did try to check out some of the Bandcamp records, and I actually downloaded Twin Fantasy back in that time. But I just couldn't get into it because obviously it was wildly different, production wise to Teens of Denial, and it was just I don't know. We'll talk about it obviously when we get into the record itself. How would you guys describe this new version of Twin Fantasy?
Well, so I guess we should try to talk a little more specifically about that first version. Even though I didn't spend a lot of time with it, it was almost unbearably lo-fi, but it's got all of the qualities of a special kind of cult record, right? So it's really lo-fi, but it's somebody just brimming with ambitions and absolutely doing, maxing out what you can accomplish with laptop microphone, basically. Stuff is layered like crazy. It acquires a shoegaze sound, even though I don't even think that's what he was going for. It's just the quality is so fucking bad that it just ends up being that way. But it's got these really intimate, personal lyrics. They're kind of pretentious, but in a charming way. And it's just that one of these bedroom, what many people would call a bedroom masterpiece, but for me, I just feel maybe I kind of missed it. And so with this record, from what I can tell, it's basically the same record. A few minor changes that maybe we'll talk about, but the same record, but just done not over polished, but keeping that kind of raw edge. And sometimes I think there's sort of tributes to the lo-fi original in that sometimes the drums are booming and distorting a little bit, and it's got a nice like hard edge to it, but you can finally hear everything that's going on, and it's got to be a revelation for fans of this record because there's a lot of layering of sound on this record. Teens in Denial is basically like, kind of an indie rock record. This has like enormous just walls of sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When it comes to the sound of the original version, it was much, much more lo-fi than I thought it was going to be. I mean, like you guys both said, I was expecting something like, early Elliott Smith or so, things people call lo-fi, but you can still understand what's going on. I didn't realize it was like literally just recorded with the, microphone on a laptop.
Right.
It was a bit, that made it difficult to listen to because, like you said, it did kind of become like a shoegaze thing just because you couldn't understand anything that was going on. But the new one, I was worried when I first heard about the whole, like, they're just re-recording this record. I wasn't aware of how ridiculously lo-fi the original, and I thought that sounds like a fucking stupid idea. I can see why he did it now, and it was kind of I almost kind of wish I listened to the original version first, because I didn't,
right?
Because it would have.
You probably can never go back if you start with this one.
I think,
I don't know.
I feel like if I'd listened to the other one first, it would have been like such a revelation to hear this. It would have been like hearing a record, through a window and being like, man, that record kind of sounds good, and then listening to it and then getting to actually hear the record. Yeah, this one, Teens in Denial, I remember not liking it because, I pretty much always hate just your regular indie rock. I feel it's unnecessary in today's, era. It's done. This was like more than that, with all the layering and just the ambition of like 16-minute songs and 13-minute songs, and I just felt it was quite a bit different from your standard indie rock. What would you add, Darren?
Yeah, so I guess, Pitchfork sort of mentions this. There's not really like a precedence for this type of approach. And, I got to thinking a little bit, and it kind of reminds me of what, the video game industry has started to do, where they will, developers will take a game that came out on like the Super Nintendo and completely reimagine it with, the latest graphics and stuff, but still try to stay true to that original formula. You know what I mean? But obviously make it better for a modern, wider audience. And I think that's kind of what Will Toledo tries to achieve here, because like you mentioned, Gabe, even though he has complete access to, everything he needs to create a very fully polished record, he definitely harkens back to that lo-fi sound with like distorting a guitar, grainy little audio clips and things like that to just I don't know, it still feels very much like what I think he originally envisioned. In listening to the original album, you're right. I mean, it does kind of have everything kind of set up for what would be like a cult hit. It actually kind of reminded me of the very, very first time I listened to Neutral Milk Hotel, where I was like kind of like put off by Jeff Mangan's
Are the
voice.
drums supposed to sound like that?
I was like, what is this? I can't believe people like this. It was really it was crazy at that point. And so I could see where this album in its original form would kind of take on that cult following. But just an impression of this album versus the previous one. I love the previous one a lot. I felt like the songs, the melodies. He was just. We talked about this, Gabe. He was like throwing everything at the wall. He just seemed like a person just brimming with ideas.
Endlessly inspired.
Yeah, and I felt inspired, like just being somebody who has dabbled with songwriting. Like he was like almost like a hero. Like he would have been a hero when we were younger. You know what I mean? Like he would have been the guy that we would have aspired to be, I think. And he seems like so in control of that, of knowing that almost, just kind of knowing what to write about and the kind of music that I imagine he's the kind of person, and I don't know if this is true or not, but he seems like the kind of person who writes music that he would enjoy. You know what I mean? Like as a fan of music, like he just seems.
Are you talking about this album as well?
Yeah. So this, in general, Will Toledo, but he does it really well again on this album here. I know it's like an album from the past, but
I kind of feel like it's a hard thing to talk about because if this just came out, I would say he's taken a few steps back in songwriting ability. As it turns out, he in real life has taken many steps forward in songwriting ability, and we're hearing songs written a long time ago. You see what I'm saying? Like the songs are not as sharp as they were on the previous album, which was like brimming not just with ideas but hooks. Now this has all the ideas without, I think, like the same sense of songcraft, and the songs all feel like monolithically huge. It's like they change a lot, but they kind of also don't change a lot. Like they'll be really long, and it's kind of just like 2 or 3 components, except for he's constantly adding new instruments and things, like layering new sounds. And so it makes it sound like we've traveled really far, like in the 13 minutes on that, second track or whatever. Like we've traveled so far. But it was really kind of a simple song that he just like kept layering and layering and layering. And like, certain songs just, it took me like forever to be able to tell these songs apart. And some of them I'm sure I'm confusing. Like, you see what I'm saying? There's something like not as hooky and more like just impenetrable.
Right. And I mean, the first time I listened to Teens of Denial, like the first song got me. Like it was just, wow, that's great. And that did not happen on this album. And in fact, it took several listens for me to actually start to enjoy it. Because I really did. I was like, I didn't like it. I really didn't like it.
See, you guys are describing why I like this record and don't like Teens of Denial. I thought Teens of Denial, I always bitch about like, it sucks when someone's just like too good at like playing an instrument or too polished and stuff. I like that this one is like, he's not as great at writing a song because they're, the older songs. The little bit of rawness. I like that, that Beach Life and Death is just like, I love like the monolithic type songs, and I love repeating thing. It's that whole minimalism thing. Just I don't know. I all the negatives you guys just said are exactly my positives on this record.
I can understand that. I can totally understand that. And it's kind of like the Ice Age song we were talking about earlier, which is like it sort of makes up for kind of like a lack of variation with just pure passion and intensity. Mm-hmm. And that's like oozing out of this record. I mean, like these songs are all, they have like sort of an anthemic quality. Like I would, after a while, as I started to get into it, I catch myself like singing along to different parts all the time because they just sound like, huge, and they just sound like, I don't know, they like just sort of on an emotional level, it like reels you in to this world. And it's, the lyrics are surprisingly not that cringy for being written when he was 19. I do kind of miss like the, he seems more humorous on the last album, Teens of Denial. This has like a lot of like, it's a little bit of that, but a lot of like the seriousness, like I think back about Teens of Denial, the first song you just mentioned, it's like, you have no right to be depressed. You haven't tried hard enough to like it. It's like a funny, like a funny way to talk about that feeling. You know what I mean? This is, I think, a lot more straight-faced. And, so this is all to say that I feel like he's grown a lot. And it's interesting to look back at where he came from, and still is really, really great. But I feel like he's gotten better. Are you kind of that opinion, Darren, or did you warm to this?
So yeah, I actually really warmed up to this record. Ended up like really, really digging it. It obviously took a while to sort of get through this 13-minute track and then the 16-minute track and try to like make sense of it. It actually helped, going through Pitchfork's review and trying to understand their understanding of the loose narrative, which there's not really like a connecting narrative, but the fact that, spelling out the lyrics and seeing that he's like a narrator sort of just addressing one other character kind of helped bring it together for me. But I mean, those hooks that I think he spread out a little more evenly on Teens of Denial are there. I mean, they are definitely there in some of the like great moments of Beach Life and Death. I think is good. I absolutely love Stop Smoking, We Love You. It kind of makes me want a Will Toledo acoustic album. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
He's just got a great voice for that kind of thing. Nervous Young Inhumans, Cute Thing. Fantastic songs. I get what you're saying, Gabe, and it's so weird to talk about this because it's like he technically is not the songwriter he is today yet on this new album, but I think that he probably, he obviously was showing a lot of promise at the age of 19, and I'm really glad that he had a chance to get an opportunity to like reimagine this or make it to what he really wanted it to be. And I think that his songwriting is incredibly strong. It is definitely Go ahead.
I mean, so I would say something like, all right, this track, Famous Prophets Stars, okay, the 16-minute track. A lot of people are like absolutely flipping out about this song. Like it's, they're calling it like the best indie song of the decade and all this stuff, right? It's grand, it's huge. And in fact, it was sort of like unfinished on the previous release of this record. And he added like about 6 minutes to it, which is sort of, I don't know the whole fucking history, but he like on Bandcamp at one point, he released like a bunch of demos. And so there was like this unfinished like outro that he was going to put on this, but ended up not. But then he ended up doing it for this one. And I just feel like he's pieced it together in a really perfect way here. And it's like a little hint of the songwriter he is now, because the song wasn't actually complete before. And he's like taken it to the next level with his current abilities. And I think it's by far the best track here because instead of having this like monolithic thing, it like, builds, crescendos, like settles back down, has like a nice piano moment, like slowly builds it, like crescendos again with this crazy, like his voice is like, like vocodered for a second or something. It's like fucking wild crescendo. It reminds me a lot of like, It's All Gonna Break by Broken Social Scene.
Yeah.
And just glorious. And, so I feel like, it's just to say that, the little hints are there, but like especially there, I don't know. It's hard to say like, I'm excited for what he's going to do next because this might not be any indication of it, but it's really cool that he's able to make a 16-minute song like that work. Do you have like a favorite, Dan?
I liked that song a lot, but I think Beach Life and Death was probably my favorite. It just... I like the repetitiveness, and I just parts of that song kind of got stuck in my head and whatnot. That was the high point for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I wanted to bring this up. If the last album, was like reminded me of like Built to Spills, There's Nothing Wrong with Love, right? This one reminds me more of like Perfect From Now On, right? Which is these bigger, grander really songs and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually really
which is
good.
So weird. Because that was built to spill, like moving forward, and this is, not, it's such a weird thing to talk about. So it sounds like we all kind of came around to this was a good thing to re-record, not just a cash grab, like some people started to say when it was first announced.
Yeah, I mean, when it was first announced, I thought that was really, really stupid. Just looking back like that, but like I said, I hadn't heard how lo-fi the original was, and I think, and I can really see like. I had heard that he said like, he felt like he'd never finished that, and it sounded like bullshit until I heard it, and like, I think it's true. You can definitely tell he had limitations on the original version, and I think it was worth revisiting, in an okay, not a cash grab or anything.
I mean. I just feel like the scope of the record kind of proves that he was right. You know what I mean? Because in some cases, I feel like he's bolder and pushing further than he did on Teens of Denial. You know what I mean? That 16-minute track, in fact, kind of represents that to me. Yeah,
I mean, I think so. I think it was. I'm glad that he did this, and even though I think maybe I like the previous album more, I think this will be sort of like some generation's classic or something. Everybody says that like Will Toledo is going to save indie rock or something, and this record will make you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got that 8.6 BNM. Thank God we got a BNM. All we had was fucking Cupcake so far this year, and then like a month and a half in, we finally get this, and it's enjoyable, and I'm just so thankful. Maybe I don't even like this record that much. I'm just so happy to have a nice new record to listen to.
So far, we have our number 1 and number 2 of our...
Yeah.
That's right. Cupcake and then this. All right, what do you guys think about that score in the B&M?
I would lower it just slightly, just a little bit. I put 8.3. Still think it needs the B&M, but does it need a B&M or is it a B&R? Being like the re-record. I'm sort of joking, but it's sort of a serious question. I kind of think it's more of a B&R type situation. You know, this isn't really a 2018 record. It's kind of a...
Well, we didn't get into a lot of these specific details, but it's kind of, it's kind of cool. Pitchfork's review is really good on this, where he's the kind of artist who likes to, like, allude to earlier things he's done and stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So he's got like an album, Teens of Style, one called Teens of Denial. He's like referencing that Cars song and, different things like intentionally. On this album, he brings up like previous motifs in later songs, and it all kind of like, comes together, but it's cool to like sort of recontextualize some of these lines and stuff. And, they kind of make the argument that he's, it's just another thing. It's such a Will Toledo thing to do, is to like revisit something, revamp it, improve it. He changes a few things here that like sort of recontextualize. They make like he changes monologues from the first one into being more like from his current perspective, looking back at his previous self, and all this stuff like face to face, mirror to mirror, relates in some way to like looking back at yourself versus being right there, stuff like. So I'm willing to accept the B&M. What do you think, Darren?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is totally worthy of the B&M thing. Like I mentioned, I think that the scope of the record kind of warrants not just revisiting, but just finishing the grand idea. Anyway, I am going to bump this up a little bit. It's climbing for me. It's at an 8.8 right now.
Ooh.
Probably will stay there, but I definitely see this being an album I'm going to be listening to the rest of the year for sure. Yeah,
I think I'm somewhere like around where Dan's at, which is like 8.3, 8.4, something like that. Definitely love the B&M or BNR, whatever you want to give it. You should listen to it. And I could see it climbing a bit, but wherever the fuck this dude goes, I'm just really excited that he's, making music. Excited to check out where he goes next.